Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm Mary Grace, and we are live right now. And I have with me today my good friend Clay Clark. He is coming to you from the Thrive Time World Headquarters down in Oklahoma. And we have a lot to talk about to you today in a short time. So we're just going to jump right in. And one of the things that is so good about having Clay on the show is that he takes deep dives into issues that are important to people who are either fully awake or just starting to wake up. Either way, wherever you fall on that spectrum, it is always good to hear from Clay. Welcome to the show.
Greetings, and I thank you for allowing me to be on your show. You do a wonderful job on your broadcast, and again, thank you for carving out time for me.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here. Clay, I've titled today's show roughly something about what is America going to look like in 2025 and beyond. And at this point, we're 100 days out from the election. You have found so much about what is going on with the World Economic Forum, with the globalists, with the people who really don't want there to be an America. What's the latest update on that trajectory of what they want for
Hmm.
America and the world?
Well, the World Economic Forum, I think, is a name that a lot of people might know now because of the research that other people and myself have done. The World Economic Forum. There's also a group called Bilderberg Group, but I'm not playing solitaire. I'm just pulling up my notes here so people can so I can give you people some facts. I can give your listeners some great facts. But the Bilderberg Group, a globalist organization that includes Stacey Abrams, Eric Schmidt from Google, and Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel is the man who's responsible for funding Elon Musk's Neuralink, for funding BlackRock's Neurotech, and for the man who was the first employer of J.D. Vance, the man who funded J.D. Vance's venture capital fund, and a man who's largely responsible for J.D. Vance's political ascension. That's Peter Thiel. So Peter Thiel is serving on the steering committee for the Bilderberg Group, and Peter Thiel is, one would say, steering the career of J.D. Vance. So what I would say is it appears as though the globalist agenda being led by the Bilderberg Group and the World Economic Forum is now trying to work its way into the RNC.
That's interesting. I've heard conflicting reports on JD Vance. Some people are saying that he's a good thing. President Trump is bringing him in as his running mate. So, I mean, what are the implications of a JD Vance vice presidency or presidency? I mean, like people say the vice president doesn't have that much power, but yeah, where could this go
Well,
if that's
before I met you and any of your wonderful listeners, I was doing this business podcast, which I still do, and I was talking about business things, and I would never talk about religion or politics on my Thrive Time Show podcast just because I didn't really feel a need to do so. But anybody who asked me, and there was a few that asked me, they said, "What do you think about Pence?" Now, this is before COVID. This is before the lockdowns, before the Great Reset. This was just people asking me, "What do you think about Pence?" And I said, "I really don't have any reason to believe that Mike Pence is a true conservative. I don't see it. I can't see it." And many people thought I was nuts, had lost my mind. But, I wasn't doing broadcasts. I wasn't putting it out there on social media. I was just telling people that I knew who asked me about it. And then when COVID happened, we saw who Mike Pence was, right? He was the head of the COVID task force. Peter Thiel is a man who is funding a lot of this surveillance technology that tests your wastewater to see if you have bird flu. Peter Thiel is heavily invested in the mRNA technology, the COVID shot mRNA technology. Peter Thiel is a transhumanist who's funded Elon Musk's Neuralink and BlackRock's Neurotech. He's on the steering committee for the Bilderberg Group. Peter Thiel, his company Palantir, its first customer for the first 3 years was, in fact, the CIA. Peter Thiel's company, he funded Facebook. So, I could just go on and on listing off facts related to Peter Thiel. So, and Peter Thiel is the one who is steering J.D. Vance. So I would just say, I think it is a really, really, maybe you could say concerning, alarming, eye-opening, whatever that is. We don't want Mike Pence 2.0. We don't want another Mike Pence there around Trump. And many people have said that their criticism of the first Trump administration was that Trump had bad counsel or was surrounded by bad people or whatever that narrative was. So I would just encourage everybody out there, should you feel the need to surround yourself with Bilderberg group members, I would recommend you don't. And I would recommend that President Donald J. Trump reconsiders his vice presidential candidate pick.
Now you have a close relationship with Eric Trump. Have you had this conversation with him?
Well, a lot of the conversations that Eric and I keep private. We keep those conversations private.
Yeah.
He's a friend of mine. I can tell you that I'm working with him on a couple projects, and Eric Trump is a wonderful man who's this isn't an Eric Trump commercial. It's just facts. He's a hardworking guy. He's very organized. He's a committed husband, committed father, and he's a guy that seeks facts. And I've always tried to consistently provide facts to General Flynn, Eric Trump, Laura Kash Patel, Mike Lindell, anybody who's, has more influence than me. I try to share the facts with them so that everybody knows what's going on. And I remember when I was sharing facts before I met you, telling everybody I knew that the models that said 2.2 million people would die from COVID were false. Everybody in my life, not some, everybody, nobody in my life agreed with me when I told them that the models that said 2.2 million people would die from COVID were false. Then when I told everybody that the PCR tests, the polymerase chain reaction tests, were falsely calibrated to inflate cases, nobody, not a single person, not one person in my life agreed with me. And then when I told people that COVID was treatable using budesonide, ivermectin, and hydroxychloroquine, because friends of mine who are doctors, Dr. Zelenko, Dr. Batar, may he rest in peace. Dr. Zelenko, may he rest in peace. Dr. Richard Bartlett, who's still alive, were treating patients and they weren't dying because they were taking they were giving their COVID patients budesonide, ivermectin, and hydroxychloroquine. Virtually everybody in my life told me I'd lost my mind. When I told somebody told people there was RNA modifying nanotechnology in the shots, and the patents had already been issued and written before COVID-19, people said I'd lost my mind. And Mary Grace, when I said that the system and method for testing for COVID-19 was patented in 2015 by the Rothschilds, I told people, go look it up. Type in system and method for testing for COVID-19. It was patented in 2015 by the Rothschilds. People told me I'd lost my mind. So I'm kind of used to that idea of being right. And then over time, people say, I apologize. So what happens is, not your listeners, but most people make decisions in three ways that are not logical. One, most people say, well, what do most people say? That's a form of false logic that people use. They say, well, Clay, what do most people say? That's not a form of logic. The second is people say, well, what do the celebrities say? And
Right.
Conservatives say, well, what does Jim Caviezel say? What does Mel Gibson say? Catholics say, what does the Pope say? But that doesn't matter. So celebrities don't matter. What most people say doesn't matter. And the third is feelings. And so there's an emotion. There's emotion. We want to know that the RNC, the last event, was the best event in the history of the RNC. We want to know that election fraud has been dealt with. We want to know that COVID is in the past and success is in the future. And we want to know that Trump is embracing the future of technology. That's what we want to know. But when we hear facts that go against what we want to be true, that's this thing called cognitive dissonance. And that's where I look in the mirror and I go, I want to not be pale, but I am pale. Look at me. Even when I see the sun, I have to squint because I'm like a man mole looking at, oh no, I'm outside the sun. I don't want to be the palest male in the world. Maybe I do. I don't know, but I am. That's facts. And so sometimes the facts go against our feelings. And I think everybody right now is struggling with a little bit of cognitive dissonance as we're discovering there is a chance that J.D. Vance's career is being steered by Peter Thiel, who is on the steering committee for the Bilderberg Group.
Okay. As I, I see in the comments here, sometimes there's a situation where people ascribe to the idea that, you try to keep your enemies close, right? That that there's a problem, that there's a potential problem, but,
Yeah.
Better the devil than the one you don't. So what do you think about that perspective?
Well, I think it's, let me try to follow that logic for a second. If you were on a football team and you had a really, really terrible quarterback and you're the head coach And someone says, Coach, your quarterback is awful. And the coach says, well, I want to keep the enemy closer. And you go, no, he's throwing the ball to the other team. Exactly, because that's what I want them to do. I mean, that seems like an extreme example, and people would toss that out and say that's hyperbole. Okay. Another example would be Fauci. I mean, Fauci, Deborah Birx. I mean, these were probably the most pro-COVID shot, pro-mask, pro-lockdown people we could think of. And they were pretty close, weren't they? I mean, they're on the same podium oftentimes. And people kept telling me, it's 7-dimensional chess. I don't even know what that means. It's 27-dimensional chess. I don't know what that means. But I think at the end of the day, there are people who are smart people that are deceived. And I think one of the things we need to know about Eve was deceived, and she sincerely believed that Satan had a good plan for her. So I believe that people are being deceived.
Okay. So who would be the alternative at this point? What do you think?
Well, this isn't a commercial for any particular person because bringing this up isn't driven by a motive to put somebody else in that position.
Right.
But you just want to have somebody who fears God and nothing else. I mean, if you've read Ecclesiastes, a lot of wonderful listeners out there have read Ecclesiastes. A lot of your wonderful listeners haven't read Ecclesiastes. So let's pull up Ecclesiastes. And Ecclesiastes is sort of the follow-up to the hit classic Proverbs, right? And it says it's big because at the end of this book, there's essentially a summary. Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 13 through 14. It says, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. The summary is, the summary was fear God and follow his laws. And so, the RNC deciding to reject God's laws and God's view on biblical marriage, that is a loss for God-fearing Americans. The Republican Party's desire to no longer be pro-life, that's a loss for people out there that fear God, right? So I just encourage everybody out there, we really got to get to a place and space where we fear God and nothing else, because this agenda is going to continue to take us more and more away from God's laws.
What do you think about the idea of making a bigger tent for the Republican Party without the Christian litmus test? So, for example, Harmeet Dillon said a prayer, and she's a Sikh, and there were people who really weren't happy about that. What's your thoughts on that? Should the Republican Party be reserved only for Christians who are practicing Christians, or should there be room for people to come in and loved into the kingdom once they're there, for example? What do you think?
Well, you asked a tough question. So let me just go. One,
Okay.
if you're gay and you want to vote Republican, okay. So, okay. Should we make the party pro-gay? I would think not, if we want to follow God's laws. I think, God, America was started as a Judeo-Christian country, a country that feared God and followed God's laws, or at least attempted to. So, I own businesses, and where we have people that work in my companies that are gay, lesbian, all these different things. I don't run around recruiting gay and lesbian employees like that's a requirement to work for me, nor do I ask. Shocking, but most of the time they tell me. I don't ask. I'm not saying, hey, buddy, who are you sleeping with? They usually come to me and say, hey, just so you know, I'm gay. Is that cool? And I say, not a problem with me, as long as you can edit the website or build the website or, code out the thing or do accounting or do graphic design. I'm not going to really discriminate based upon that, but I'm going to put out a gay, I'm not going to put out an LGBTQ flag to celebrate that activity, if that makes any sense. So that's kind of how I look at it. But again, I know America's not a theocracy, and so people out there that can do what they want to do. But I just know that, Peter Thiel is about as aggressively transhumanist as could be. He's very, very heavily involved in the Bilderberg group. He's on the steering committee. He's openly gay. He teamed up with Palantir to introduce surveillance technology that is truly disturbing if you look it up, folks. He funded Facebook. I mean, so I don't know. know if that's a good thing for people out there that fear God and who are pro-Christ. And I view everything from a pro-Christ perspective. So just so everybody knows my bias, I believe in God. That's like the number one thing is fear God and only God. So I'm all about saving America, a better place to go to hell from. And I've said that from the age. I've said that on interviews before. So the Reawaken tour, which is certainly not the defining moment of my life, it's not the only thing I do. I did it because there was lockdowns, quarantines, curfews, and people didn't know that the models are false, the PCR tests are false, and the treatments were real. So it was a life-saving event for a lot of people. And I got a lot of threats. I got sued. There's a lot of things that happened to me that were not good as a result of doing it. And people say, well, why did you do it? I did it because I fear God and nothing else. And the Bible tells us that and I'll look this up and I'll give you the actual verse here for you. But the Bible tells us that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And I don't think a lot of people think about it that way, but I do. And so the Bible, Proverbs 9:10, I apologize, I don't have the whole Bible memorized, folks, but Proverbs 9:10, it states with great enthusiasm, it's very articulate, it's very specific. It says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy is understanding. Also, Hebrews 10:25 tells us to not forsake the gathering, even as we draw closer to the end. So to me, a lockdown was never an option. And it had nothing to do with the Constitution. It had to do with Hebrews 10:25 that tells us we shouldn't forsake the gathering even as we draw closer to the end. And it had to do with a biblical mandate that God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. So I put God first, God over government, and government is a number two in my world.
So thank you for explaining that. I want to camp out on this a little bit because I think I think this question about what happened with the RNC is central for a lot of people. And it does have to do, there are a lot of questions around morality, but I think also for me, there's a question of grace. And so, for example, one of the things that I think has happened in our nation is that Christians have withdrawn from the marketplace, from the places of worship, from the schools, from the all of the places of influence, and in a lot of ways they have put up like a hand, like a barrier for people to come in and experience the love of Christ. And so when it comes to something like the RNC, is it the job of the RNC to address issues, for example, like abortion? I'm not advocating for abortion, just don't get me wrong here, but is it their job or is it a states' rights issue that that Christians obviously should have influence there? They should be at the forefront of grassroots efforts to make sure that legislation doesn't get passed in favor of abortion. But what is our role, and how much there's a echo here. I'm going to try muting you for just a second. What is our role as Christians? And I'm going to unmute you in just a second. That's kind of where I'm just struggling with this because I feel like we went down this horrible, horrible slide into amorality and immorality because Christians developed this sort of exclusive Republican club that didn't allow anybody else in from outside of the camp. That's where I'm coming from on it.
Okay. Well, I would just say that the Declaration of Independence, that's a document that many people have read, but it basically was written to ensure that Americans have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So in my opinion, and for anybody out there, we got Joe, we got Barbara, we got Penny, Karen, probably a lot of wonderful people that probably know the Bible more than I do, right? But I'll just say this. It's hard to have life if you're dead, aborted. It's hard to have liberty if you're dead, aborted. It's hard to pursue happiness if you're dead and aborted. So then if we get into the Bible, Leviticus tells us not to, the old child sacrifice thing, Baal, Moloch, Jeremiah. I mean, just the Bible's pretty clear. We shouldn't sacrifice our babies. And really, what is an abortion? It's a sacrificing. It's a sacrificing of your child at the altar of you don't want to take responsibility for the action that you took. So therefore you want to sacrifice your child. And someone says, that's not true. My sister was raped. Okay, cool. You guys can debate that with God. But I'm saying the vast majority of abortions, at least that I see in my life, I have a lot of employees who work with me, they're out of convenience. They're thinking, you know what? I want to sacrifice my baby. It's not convenient for me. So again, I'm a very, very fundamentalist. That's what you're going to get here with me. And so someone else can have their different interpretation, but I believe that the Declaration of Independence gives us the rights to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. That was the idea of it. And I believe that abortion, if I was president, and I certainly will never be president because my worldviews are too hardline, I would say that abortion should be banned on a federal level. Why? Because I don't think you should be sacrificing babies to bail. And that's what I would say. Not because of the rights or the responsibility or because we shouldn't sacrifice babies to bail. That would be my justification. And then I would throw out quotations from Leviticus and Jeremiah, and that's what I would talk about. And I wouldn't be talking about, well, it's a woman's right, and it's a man's right. And in the state of Delaware, it's their right. And, statute House Bill number 2274 says, and then I don't care about any of that. I'm just saying we got the right life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's hard to have if you're dead. Furthermore, we should not be murdering babies, which is what abortion is. So that's sort of my worldview there. Now, if you go to the RNC, this is the kind of highbrow conversation. Let me give you my quick summary of the RNC. This is what they say. They say, several scholars, top scholars, many scholars have said it should be a states' right issue. It should be an issue of the states. Several scholars, top scholars say it should be a states' right issue. And then states like Ohio are more liberal, and states like Kansas are more liberal. It's a state right issue. That's what you're going to hear all the way from the top down at the RNC. But what you're going to hear from me, who has what I'm saying has little to no significance in the minds of most people, I would say 100% no to baby murder all the time. Why? Because I'm going to stand in front of Christ one day and be judged, and therefore I'm 100% against child sacrifice. I just am. And so that's the view I have. Now, again, you're not going to hear that from the RNC, but that's why previous to the Great Reset, I had no interest in politics. That's why during the Great Reset, I also have no interest in politics. And that's also why if you were to ask me, who do I trust more, Republicans or Democrats, I always trust Democrats more, because Democrats traditionally will tell you their Luciferian, godless, globalist ideas directly to your face. Where most Republicans that I've ever met, senators, congressmen, and governors, mayors, they'll typically tell you they're conservative, but they're not. So if you say, who would you trust more in a foxhole? I typically go with a Democrat, because they'll tell you directly to your face what they're going to do, where most Republican leaders that I've met throughout my lifetime, and I vote conservative every time, they typically will tell me to my face, Clay, I met with governors, Mary Grace, who told me, Clay, I'll never do a lockdown in our state. You know me, brother. I've known you as the governor. I'd never lock down. I've had governors tell me to my face, I'd never lock down. And then they do. And it's ridiculous. And then there are press conferences. Remember the press conferences, Mary Grace? They always brought out the guy who did the sign language while they're talking about COVID restrictions. And in the conservative states, the governors would get up and they would say, well, in our state, we're going to issue a shelter in place, and as Christians, we ask you to look out for the health of other people. And that guy next to him is doing the sign language. But at the end of the day, it's unconstitutional, it's unbiblical, and it's not a good idea to lock people down. So again, I that's my long form answer.
Okay. Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about what happened over the last few weeks with the attempted assassination of President Trump and the subsequent bunkering of Joe Biden, and then what I would call a soft coup of Joe Biden, and now bringing Kamala in. Where do you see us going in the next 100 days? Have you thought much about that? What do you see happening?
Where I'm going to go, and I don't know if this is helpful, but this is where I'm going to go. I'm going to go and continue to share the truth with the people of influence to the extent that I can. That's what I'm doing. So me personally, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to continue sharing the facts. That's most of your listeners who, I think there's probably like 1% of your listeners or of listeners who know me from my business career. Because like my business stuff, I have a podcast I do on Spotify. I've never stopped doing that. And we've been number one on iTunes 6 times. I've never stopped doing the business conferences. That's what I do. I do business. That's my thing, is I help grow companies. I like to grow them. But my biblical worldview was never asked about on a public platform or a semi-public platform. It just was never, no one really asked me, nor did I feel the need to share it unless people asked me. And so my worldview hasn't changed at all. And so many people are saying, Clay, if you keep this worldview, don't you know you're going to fall out of favor? You're going to fall out of favor. You're going to fall out of favor. You're going to lose your favor. I don't care about my favor in the political world. If anybody out there, if you ever read the book of Amos, read the book of Amos again from the Bible. Amos didn't claim to be a prophet, nor was he a son of a prophet, but he was educating the society around him about God's laws. So I think I'm kind of famous Amosing right now. My job is to be, and I think you do a great job on your broadcast doing this. You share facts in a world that wants feelings. And I'm not going to get off of my biblical worldview. And in fact, as it gets worse, Matthew 5:10-11, it says, "Blessed are ye who are persecuted righteousness' sake, for ye shall inherit the kingdom of heaven." So I'm going to continue doing this. And I believe that right now, for anybody out there watching, you might disagree. I believe that we're living through Mark chapter 13. Someone should read it and look it up. I believe we're living through Matthew chapter 24, Luke chapter 21. I know I'm giving you a lot. Mark chapter 13, Matthew chapter 24, Luke chapter 21. And I believe we're living through Revelation chapter 16 right now. And someone says, huh? Yeah, Revelation chapter 16, verse 12-14 says, "When the Euphrates River dries up, the false prophet will show up. China and Russia will team up. The nations will gather against Israel, and the beast technology will show up." And by the way, Yuval Noah Harari, a man many people believe is the false prophet, he is now referring to AI technology as the beast. And so Yuval Noah Harari was just brought in by the Bank of International Settlements to join this guy, Augustin Karstens. And these two idiots are talking about introducing programmable central bank digital currency that will be controlled by AI that has a anti-Christian worldview. Sounds a lot like the mark of the beast kind of technology to me. This guy, Yuval Noah Harari, calls AI technology the beast.
Okay. I want to go back just a little bit. Like, where do you see us going in the next 100 days with the election? Do you think that there is going to be an election? General Flynn doesn't think there's going to be one.
Well, I am not prophetic, and I'm also not a good guesser. So
okay,
I believe. Now, again, I read the Bible obsessively. So I read the Bible probably the way that some people, I don't know, watch CSI or watch ESPN or something. I read the Bible. Okay, so that's where I'm going all the time. So I believe the Bible was written not to scare. I don't think Jesus or God, I don't think the Father, Son, Holy Ghost, I don't think God was saying, "Oh, we're really going to scare them with this chapter. Oh, this will be great." No, I think God wrote the Bible to prepare us, not to scare us, right? So I believe that God allowed these things to be prophesied. So in Mark chapter 13, it says you're going to have wars, rumors of wars, check. Famines, check. Pestilence, check. By the way, bird flu. Neighbor rising against neighbor, check. Because iniquity, that means a lack of God's laws. Because of iniquity shall abound. There'll be neighbor against neighbor. There'll be betrayal. It lays it out. Not to scare, but to prepare. And then what we have to do is we have to say, "Dear Jesus, please come into my heart and forgive me of my sins so that I may be found worthy of being with you for eternity." And then we have to reject the satanic, Luciferian, globalist, godless, centrist worldview that we all have by default. And we have to follow God's laws. And if we do that, then God has promised us eternal salvation with him because of the birth, death, and resurrection of his son, Jesus Christ. And for anybody who rejects the birth, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, that would be the Antichrist agenda. And those who are believers of the birth, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, that's the pro-Christ agenda. So what I'm trying to do is to share the gospel at scale. That's my worldview. And if America can be saved, great. If it can't be, I have 5 kids. I don't want that. But either way, I'm unshakable in my worldview. And I've been very consistent with this. And as we're getting further along into the central bank digital currencies, the collapse of the dollar, BRICS, what? Yes, folks, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, they're in the process of hoarding the earth's gold for the past 17 years in preparation to do what? To introduce a gold-backed, programmable central bank digital currency, aka hyperinflation. These people don't want to make the dollar worth less. They want to make the dollar worthless. And that's Revelation chapter 6, verse 6. It prophesied hyperinflation. So I believe we're going to head for hyperinflation. Wars, rumors and wars, famines, pestilences, neighbor rising against neighbors. And then the Bible also tells you, Mark chapter 13, there'll be false saviors that arise. What? Yeah. So people that appear to be a good guy who are not the good guy. And people say, really? Yeah, it says that. So I think people need to have the discernment up. I think we need to get in the Bible. And I think if you haven't watched Tucker Carlson's interview with John Rich, you got to watch that interview, because John Rich, country singer, he just shares the gospel unapologetically to an audience of people who largely haven't read the Bible on a consistent basis. And I would put myself in that category previous to about 4 years ago. But, you know, I would say we all got to get biblically literate. We got to get right with Christ. And then maybe on a practical level, I know you have a precious metals dealer that you believe in, that you vetted, that you feel good about. I think we need to get out of the fiat currency while we can. By the way, gold went from $400 an ounce when my daughter was born. My daughter's 20 now. It went from $400. I started buying gold when my daughter was born. It was $400 an ounce. Now it is $2,400, almost $2,500 an ounce. So you got to get out of central. You have to get out of the fiat currency. Get out of the fiat currency before they introduce a programmable central bank digital currency. Second, if you can store up on food resources, I'm sure you have some great affiliate partners for that. I think it's important to do that. And third, just know bird flu is around the corner. They've already declared an emergency in Iowa, Minnesota. What? Bird flu's already been declared an emergency in Iowa? Huh? Michigan? Yeah. Colorado? Okay. Did you know that in Michigan, they already shut down the largest egg manufacturer and laid off 400 employees because of bird flu? Did you know that Colorado has declared an emergency? I mean, do we know these things? We've already euthanized almost 4% of America's poultry just in the past couple months. I mean, this is wild stuff here. So I just think we got to get ready, get right with Jesus. And, I don't know, for those of you who believe in the rapture, that'll be fun. For those of you that don't, maybe it'll still be fun. For those of you who believe in mid-trib, we could have that debate. But the point is, the Bible doesn't change. Maybe our interpretation of it does. But I challenge everybody out there today to read the Bible and then to go outside more often than I do, so you won't be as pale as I am.
Well, Clay, you're working so hard over there, and the fact that you're not outside, in some ways I'm thankful because of all that you have gotten done and the message that you've gotten out, but I think you should go out and spend a little more time around your little lake out there, at least, and go back and forth. The little wooded path would be a good spot, I think. But I've got you muted again because we have an echo, and I know that we're winding up on time here. One
Sure.
thing that I just want to encourage listeners is, as Clay is talking about these things, we always say here, don't be scared, be prepared. And I'm going to show you at the end of this broadcast some alternatives to help you prepare. So stick around even after Clay leaves. But Clay, do you have any last words for our listeners today? I know that we're a little over on time here, and I don't want to keep you too much longer.
No. I'm going to do this real quick. The word hope, Thessalonians, and the word hope. Well, and again, folks, I don't have the Bible memorized, but I know where to go. All right. So what I'm going to do for a second is I'm going to encourage everybody. We're going to go ahead and open up our Bible, if we can, to 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. And someone says, where's that? It's in the Bible, 1 Thessalonians. And it's okay. We all have to start somewhere. So if you're new to the Bible, that's okay. And we're going to open up our Bible to 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. And the Bible tells us how we should be. And I'm going to read it to you starting at verse 11. It says here, and that ye study to be quiet and to do your own business and to do work with your own hands, as we commanded you, that ye may walk honestly toward them that are without, and that ye may have lack of nothing. But I would have you not to be ignorant, brethren, concerning them which are asleep, okay, that ye sorrow not, even as others which have no hope. Okay, here we go. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so them also which sleep in Jesus will God bring with him. For this we say unto you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord shall not prevent them which are asleep. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, and with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. Wherefore, comfort one another with these words. Wherefore, comfort one another with these words. Somebody says, John Rich doesn't believe in the rapture. Wherefore, comfort one another with these words. I'm not saying you have to, I'm not telling you how to interpret. I said, somebody out there, you're watching right now, you believe in the rapture. Some of you don't. Some of you are mid-trib. Some of you are post-trib. Someone says, what's the word trib? I don't really care about your interpretation or my interpretation of the scripture. What I care about is that we actually read the Bible. And the Bible was not written to scare. It was written to prepare. And I would tell you, if you're out there today and you want to know what's going on from people who are more intelligent than me, we have the final Reawaken America tour coming up here October 18th and 19th. This is going to be in Selma, North Carolina. It's just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina, and it's going to feature the biggest lineup we've ever had. Roseanne, the comedian, will be there. Jim Brewer, the comedian, will be there. You say, that doesn't seem very funny. This isn't a time to be funny. This is okay. We'll have serious speakers like Peter Navarro. Then we have serious speakers like General Flynn. You say, well, I won't want someone who's spoke at the RNC. We have Eric Trump. We have Laura Trump. We have Cash Patel. I mean, I go on and on listing off the speakers: Mike Lindell, Cash Patel, Laura Trump, Eric Trump. The lineup continues to grow. Pastor Leon Benjamin, Dr. Stella Emanuel. It's an incredible lineup. Dr. Simone Gold. And we have 70 speakers. If you haven't been to one of our events, this is the final one. 70 speakers over 2 days. Someone says, well, you're doing it for the money. Well, I've actually been sued. I just got out of a fund deposition in Colorado again. And so I'm being sued, subpoenaed. We've lost millions of dollars on the tour, but we do it because we want to get the word out there. So you can name your price, which just means you go to timetofreeamerica.com and you can pay any price you want to pay. So someone says, well, why are you doing it then? We're trying to save America. Well, why? I want to lead people to Christ. Why? I think that's what we're supposed to do. It's called the Great Commission. It's our full-time job. You can learn more about it at Luke 9:5 in the Bible. Luke chapter 9, verse 5. That's our 9 to 5 job, the Great Commission. But I encourage everybody to get those tickets for the Reawaken America tour today. Timetofreeamerica.com. Timetofreeamerica.com. I promise you, every speaker, you're going to enjoy them more than me. And my job is just to keep us on time and to keep the energy going. So thank you so much for your time today. I really do appreciate you. And for anybody in the comments that is wrestling with the idea about the rapture or there not being a rapture, just read the Bible yourself. I don't think you need to be a theologian to understand it. I think you should read the Bible yourself. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 is where we were just reading.
Thank you, Clay, for being here. Really appreciate it. As always, you're welcome back to the show anytime. And we always look forward to what you have to say. To my listeners, please share this out, tag others. Remember to like and subscribe. Hit the thumbs up if you're on Rumble. That helps us get up into the feed there. And I just want to remind everybody, don't be scared, be prepared, get into the word, and do something every day that brings you into a place of hope. Because as you take these deep dives, it's so important that you step back from the emotion of everything and look at what's factual and look at what's true. And the word of God is true. And so that's where we take our comfort. Otherwise, you're going to drive yourself crazy. So we
Right.
don't want that. And that's not why Clay is talking about these things. He wants you to be aware and to have the truth on your side, because it's very hard to navigate everything that we have coming at us if we are blown around by our emotions. And I think that's a really important thing to understand here. Clay is very rational, very pragmatic. Even though he talks enthusiastically, he's actually very grounded. So, and that's one of the things that I really appreciate about you, Clay. And thank you for all the work and the tireless effort that you're putting into this. And for people who do run a business, I do encourage you to check out Clay's Thrive Time podcast and also his workshops. Whether you are a seasoned business owner, you're trying to get your business to the next level, maybe you're thinking of starting a business, you want to know if it'll scale. Clay's workshops might be a good fit for you. I've been to a couple and I always learn something every time I go. And also, I feel like it's taken me to the next level on a lot of ways. And so, Clay, when is your next workshop?
Yeah, that'll be Tim Tebow, the football player and entrepreneur. He'll be joining me in December. And for the business workshops, just so you know, it's like the reverse of this show. Literally, all I talk about is how to grow your business on a practical level. And so when you go to thrivetimeshow.com, it's like you go there And you'll see all these success stories. We've had thousands and thousands of clients that we've helped to produce. We've helped to create multi-million-dollar companies. I mean, doctors and dentists and lawyers. And we don't really talk about religion. We don't talk about politics. We just talk about, helping the muffler guy sell more mufflers, helping the dentist to grow his practice, helping the accountant to create time freedom. So it really is more of a life optimization workshop. And so we bring in speakers. Some of them are worth hundreds of millions of dollars who happen to be Christians, and they've been successful in franchising or they've been successful in their different industries. We bring in professional foot athletes from time to time, like a Tim Tebow. We bring in top-notch entrepreneurs like Michael Levine. By the way, Michael Levine was the PR consultant for Bill Clinton and George Bush at the same time. Think about that. I mean, so you bring in these people that are like skilled at their craft, and they're all waking up to what we're waking up to, right? I mean, they're waking up, they're going, wait a minute, I was representing a Democrat and a Republican at the same time. How was that possible? And now they're hearing words like the uniparty, and they're going, that makes sense. So it's a really different group. We're bringing in people that are focused on how to grow a company. And that's typically where I focus my time and energy. And because I only work with 160 clients, I have a pretty good knowledge of who they are and what they're involved in and how they're growing. And one of our longtime clients, they sell dogs. They're dog breeders in Pennsylvania, and they've increased the amount of dogs they're selling by 50%. That's pretty good, right? And they're Christians, they're dog breeders, and they've increased their sales by 50%. They agree with the topics we talked about on today's show, but they also have to, feed their family, and they have to do that. And so they're saying, well, the Great Reset might be happening, but I need to feed my family. So they've grown their dog breeding company dramatically. I mean, so there's so many success stories. And if you need an encouragement, just go to thrivetimeshow.com and click on the testimonials button. And I'm not exaggerating. We have over 2,000, and I know this because we enumerate the success stories, over 2,000 documented video testimonials from real clients that I've helped to grow since 2005. So I talked to an insurance guy today by the name of Brett. Okay. His insurance company is called Leisure Insurance. This is not a commercial for him. He's Leisure Insurance. Look him up. He's in Oklahoma, Leisure Insurance. He has grown his business by 8 times this year. He's selling insurance 8 times. So again, if you're looking for practical skills that will allow you to pay the bills, we do that. But if you're talking about earthly, talking about salvation and eternal salvation, you got to go to the Bible for that. And I always tell people, if I ever say something that goes against the Bible, please go with the Bible.
Exactly. I will say about your business conference, Clay, is it's I've been to a lot of conferences, especially because I used to be a teacher, and teachers can attest to the fact that there's some like crazy conferences out there, but most of what you're doing at a teacher conference, at least for me, was like looking at the clock because you're so ready for it to be over. But your conferences it's the only conference I've ever been to where there's helicopter rides, a petting zoo, llamas, and a mariachi band at 7 a.m. So 6:30 a.m. I mean, I just want to make clear to people, this is not your typical business conference, and it's the kind of conference where you don't actually want to get out of your seat while the presentations are going on because you don't want to miss anything. And give me just in the comments here, I want you guys to type the word conference, or let's type amen if you've ever been to a conference where you are literally just counting the minutes until you can take a break. Just type amen, because this is the opposite of that. It's the opposite. You really don't want to miss anything. You just want to be able to soak it all in, which is why I've been more than once. And I totally recommend it. And it's in Oklahoma, and it also gives you a view sort of into the Clay Clark mind that conceived the entire Thrive Time World Headquarters. So that's a big bonus of what you get. There's just a lot there. And the networking is fantastic too, because you're getting connected to people who are like-minded in a lot of ways. Not everybody there is going to believe the way that I do as a Christian, the way that Clay believes, but there's a lot of people that are drawn there. I have a comment from Liz on
Sure.
YouTube, and we
Yeah.
got to say this. She says, Clay, you're a mighty fast talker. Could you slow your roll a bit?
Well, one thing people don't know this, I used to stutter as a kid. I couldn't talk really at all till I was about 13 years old. And so one of
Amazing.
the reasons for stuttering, for those of you who used to stutter or who have studied that, it's people that stutter, typically their brain operates at a little bit faster speed than is normal. It doesn't mean it's smarter, just faster. And so my brain is, so I'm kind of in my mind, almost in like a slow motion, like a underwater. And it's, but again, it's, if you've ever stuttered, one of the things that causes it, it's like an overactive or fast intensity. So it has drawbacks. It has, also you never have to hit double speed on a podcast that I'm on. You may have to slow it down a little bit, so there you go.
Well, sometimes you do medium talking for my people. It's
At a
just
medium pace, that's right, yeah.
we haven't talked about that in a while, so I guess you forgot. But that's okay, guys. You can slow it down a little bit on the replay, and please do on the replay, let us know sort of where you are on all of what we're talking about. Leave us some feedback in the comments. A lot of what we talked about today has been sort of controversial for some people. It's got you thinking, and that's part of the reason that I do what I do, is because I really want people to be thinking and praying and looking for solutions, but also going beyond the status quo and going beyond what you're told to believe. And so many people are waking up and going, wait a minute. Everything that I've been told, most of it is a lie, and the people that and institutions that I've been told to trust actually hate me. And and so if you're in that category, you're in the right place, because we are really trying to help you go in the direction of truth. And like Clay says, if you're in doubt, don't believe me, don't believe Clay, go to the Word of God and seek guidance from the Word of God, because that's where the truth is. And Jesus himself says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And so that is, the buck stops with Jesus. Oh, did we lose Clay?
I am here.
Okay. All right. Awesome. So, somebody says, I like his fast talking, more info in the time allotted. Exactly. So we just get it all in as fast as we can. So I think that's it, guys. And we are going to again say thank you to Clay. We're going to play you out with a little commercial here. Please, please remember to support our America First partners right here on our show, because it helps you get more of this content from Mary Grace. And that's what we want. We want to make sure that you have the truth and you have access to information that is coming to you from people who actually love you and want you to live and thrive and want to save America. And that's us right here. Thanks again, everybody, for being here. Thanks, Clay, for coming. Clay
Thank you.
Clark, wonderful to have you. Listen, your health is your best investment. We have a country to save, and we need people who are in the best shape of their lives, physically, mentally, spiritually. Why not connect with a team who cares about you on every single level from the inside out? Official Synapse is that team. OfficialSynapse.com. It's official, SYNAPSE.com. Tell them Mary Grace sent you, and they will treat you like family. If you're like most people, you really probably haven't thought about transferring your paper dollars into physical gold and silver. But I want to tell you a story. My friend Andrew Sorcini over at Beverly Hills Precious Metals, he recently went overseas and he wanted to buy a watch. He likes fine watches. He took 3 currencies with him. He took gold, he took Bitcoin, and he took American dollars. Now, there used to be a time when the American dollar was king. I remember that when I used to travel overseas. Everybody wanted dollars. The people that he was dealing with would not take his dollars because the dollar is so devalued around the world. They wanted the gold. So this is what I recommend to you. I want you to think about this. If you have cash in the bank, if you have an investment account that you have worked hard for years to accumulate, consider the value of converting that money into physical gold and silver. You're not buying something that's losing value. You're changing those worthless dollars into a tangible physical asset that will go up in value, which it has done historically. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to go to bh-pm.com. The first thing you're going to do is schedule that free consultation. Second thing, just think rationally about this, pray about it, go to the Lord, see what the best decision for you and your family is. I can't tell you that. I don't want to pressure you into that. What I do know is don't be scared, be prepared. And so the third thing you want to do is make a decision for you and your family. Make a decision, take action. bh-pm.com. Let them know Mary Grace sent you. When it comes to food, we really want to be aware of what is in the food that we're consuming. And that includes different types of technologies, jibber jabbers, technology that can alter your genetic makeup. And this is why we want to focus on American grown beef that isn't injected with things that you wouldn't put into your own body. We really don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. We saw 4 years ago what happened when the whole country shut down and people couldn't even go to the grocery store. We saw what happened when meat and other foods were rationed, and that could happen any day. We want you to be prepared. We want you to take action. And one of the best ways to do that is to secure food for yourself and your family. What better way than to go to griddownchowdown.com, use promo code Mary Grace, get a sustainable, reliable, shelf-stable source of high-quality American beef. All you do is go to griddownchowdown.com, tell them Mary Grace sent you, put your order in the basket and check out, and you're good to go. The other thing you can do is you can get a subscription. If you do a subscription, you're going to get this freeze-dried beef delivered to your door every month. And you're going to save a little bit while you do that. You're going to stockpile it, or you can just cook with it. Some people are just using it for their regular cooking. It's really up to you, but it's super convenient because it's freeze-dried and it's shelf-stable for 12, 15 years or more. Go to griddownchowdown.com and use promo code Mary Grace. I just want to give a shout out to everybody who watches this show. Thank you for being a participant. Thank you for being a loyal audience member. I just want to remind you, if you like what you've seen, please share this and don't forget to subscribe, turn on your notifications, and also sign up for my email list so you never miss a show.